Thanks everyone for joining us. This is the third in our series of conversations around the book In Good Hands, Leadership Conversations About Our Time. Our first two guests were Robert Ginyard and Kevin Bennett, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to my colleague and mentor and friend, Dr. Wade Azmy. How are you, Wade?
Eric, I'm very good, thank you. And thank you for organizing this podcast in relation to the book. I really appreciate that.
No, look, the appreciation is all on this side, Wade. I think the process of putting the book together was maybe a book in itself about what you learn along the way, about what you should be doing versus what you'd like to do. But look, it's good that we got it to the point where we got it to. And today I'd like to focus um, those listening to this pod around your two contributions to the book, which is strategic leadership. So fundamentally, before we get started, define for us strategic leadership and why you think it matters.
Thank you. Strategic leadership is very critical in any organization. It differs from people leadership because its focus is about how can I steer the organization, not the people, the entire organization in the environment that now can only be described with total uncertainty, ambiguity, and volatility. How can I set the direction and being able to adapt to the changes happening around me continuously as I go. And that require a skill set that is not widely available for leaders. It requires definitely first to have a clear vision about the future and the purpose of the organization. But then it requires the capacity to read the future through the signals that we see around us. And this is when the foresight and the strategic foresight can be employed in order to fulfill this purpose. How to read these signals and understand the implications of these signals on my business, on my environment, on my organization, and how can I find the best fit for my resources in the organization to fit into this changing environment and keep adapting to it. And that's really when future scenarios are very important as a result of reading these signals. So, in a summary, strategic leadership is about the senior leaders in charge of the organization, and usually it's the C suite, their capacity to read the environment beyond the traditional market analysis, go to read the distant signals and what it means for us, and how we can create, from there, read it first, interpret it, make sure that I'm aware of my biases as a leader in the way I make decisions, and then being able to establish the roadmap to the future based on that. There is a lot of writings and developments happening in people leadership, but honestly, in the strategic leadership, since the Hamburg developed the strategic leadership, the upper echelons theory, in the 80s till today, it's still intact as the key concept. So in the book, in chapter 2, we cover this concept in details. And then we move to chapter 3 into the practical side of it. How can I translate this into behavior and practices in today's world that actual leaders can acquire these strategic leadership skills and make it happen in their environment?
Yeah, that's important to note that in reading your contribution, it's how do you make some of the theory practically applicable? And one other thing that I note in reading yours and Professor Luke van der Land's contribution to the book is it should be front of mind for people that human beings want predictability, they don't want ambiguity, and they want patterns, and they want things to be a certain way. And everything you've described is a world of work where ambiguity, change, uncertainty, instability is, and I hate this term, but the new normal of doing business. Exacerbated, I think, in some senses, looking post-COVID. But I think going forward, one of the benefits of having such an interconnected business world is it leads to the things that you just talked about before. So okay, so that's some scene setting. So let me ask you then, in the context of the book, How do you see what your contribution fitting into those of the other authors?
I think the major part of the contribution here that can fit and complement actually the other authors and the great work that they added to the book. I think it's the space of where a leader can take their vision into practice. And this is really when the topic around how the leader first can make sense of their own thinking and then can give sense to people around them. So the sense making and the sense giving as a process that can really create narratives around them about the future direction, which people actually can socialize, can entertain, can use it as a platform for storytelling everywhere in the organization in order to invisibly dig in all the way to the front line when there is alignment, there is consistency, there is clarity, but also allow the feedback. So it's not only top down, allow the feedback of what's working, what's not working. And then through adaptable leadership, the leader can actually guide the ship, based on this feedback that they are getting in order to ensure that the alignment and the consistent performance will continue. I think this part maybe where I see it's complementary to everything else that we have seen in the book, Eric.
Okay, let me ask you this. If you were to speak to, let's say you had a emerging leader in front of you, able to have a conversation about the chapter that you wrote and what it might mean for them. In summary, what would you tell that emerging leader they need to take away to potentially add something to their leadership toolkit?
I think for emerging leaders, one of the major areas that I strongly recommend for them is storytelling. Learn how to tell stories. Learn how to tell stories that you are passionate about and try to articulate this in three dimensions. Try to dominate it in how you feel, how you think, the implications. Try to articulate this in a way that people in everywhere around you can actually also not only receive it, but articulate it themselves to the same level of clarity within their context. So storytelling, I think, is maybe one of the skill sets that I'm very keen to see emerging leaders acquiring. And that will help them definitely because let's face it, most of the leaders I know, honestly, whether emerging or they already in a leadership position, they usually have, if it's not a clear vision, they usually have goals. They usually have goals in front of their eyes. Where they fail is when they connect to the army behind them that supposedly, are there to implement this and achieve this. And this is when things actually don't happen. So the capacity to take your narrative through storytelling and embed it in people's heads, but also receive the feedback about it, I think is maybe the best skill set that leaders will need into the future, Eric.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from with that. So let's paint that scenario a little differently. How would you sell the benefits of what you've written up for an established leader?
For an established leader, I would say, let's first try to understand the level of engagement this organization have and how they reach this level of engagement. Is this through the carrot and stick still? Or no, we are actually in a space here when the sense making and the sense giving and the narrative and then the engagement that turn into viral engagement in the organization seems, vivid and seems to be shining everywhere in the organization when anyone at any level really understand what is going on. And then how they deal with the continuous changes that's happening around them. Because maybe they reached where they are in leadership in calm waters when everything was okay. And then suddenly we were hit with the COVID, with the wars, with all the unambiguity that we have now. And they started to struggle because they are not adapting. So are we still having everybody, behind us, or no? We have pockets, and people actually, the level of anxiety in the organization start to build up. This journey doesn't have a start and stop. It's continuous, and whether they really uh, continue to measure this or not and continue to sense this or not is a different story. And I will personally suggest to them to have equality engagement survey in their organization. And that's another issue because leaders tend to measure employee satisfaction, not engagement. Engagement is a different story, completely different animal. Satisfaction is easy. The carrot and stick can drive satisfaction. Uh, give people more money, they'll be happier. But engagement is different. The engagement when the sense making, the sense giving got a level of emotional, cognitive, physical engagement that people are absorbed in their job to reach the highest level of productivity they can with the tools they have. But on the other hand, as well, they are in a space when they find better ways to do things and adopt innovation as a way to transform even what they're doing, to produce a better outcome to the future. That can only happen through deep engagement. So I would suggest if the leader is thinking that no, we are in good space, actually we have 80% engagement. Usually when I hear this say, are you measuring engagement to satisfaction? Because most of the time they're measuring satisfaction. And people, leadership is shining in that place, but not necessarily strategic leadership.
So there you go. For those listening, you've got some free, very high level consulting advice here from Dr. Azmi. No, that's brilliant. So, look, just to round off the discussion, Wade, let me ask you what would be the key takeaway from your chapter you'd like to share with those that are listening, and what would you say is the key takeaway from the book?
I suggest the book because it was really written by all of us with a practitioner mindset in the core of our thinking. I suggest that leaders need to consider now that we have to learn new behaviors. And these new behaviors are changes maybe in the way we approach leadership now, especially the strategic leadership part of it. These new behaviors needs some help. Seek assistance, read, continuous learning, coaching. Coaching is very important if you want to develop new behaviors like this. If you want to develop your capacity to think strategically and read the environment around you in much clearer way, coaching actually is a very good tool. So don't shy away or don't feel that I've been a leader for 10 years or 15 years. I don't think I need coaching. I think coaching to help you to develop your thinking further, especially in the environment we are in today, can facilitate the cognitive development, the new perspective, can facilitate the foresight activities that you need to think about, and then move into the behavioral side, how this will change in the behaviors that can help you to acquire this storytelling capacity and narrative communication to a space that can really engage people. That require new skill set, Eric. And I don't think all leaders can claim that they have this as a second nature.
Brilliant. An excellent way to end the discussion. Wade, thank you for joining us.
My absolute pleasure. And thank you for the leadership to get this book out.
Thank you. So, for those listening, this has been the Feros Institute podcast series around the book In Good Hands Leadership Conversations about Our Times. Thank you for joining us. Our next conversation will be with Daniel Fletcher, who contributed a chapter around leadership in the local government space. I'm looking forward to catching up with Daniel. And for those listening, we'll catch you on the next podcast.